Good afternoon. Welcome to Robots and Red Tape. I'm your host, Nick Shutt. Really fortunate to have my friend Andy Desai here with me today. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good morning, everyone. Again,
Absolutely, man. Really appreciate you hopping on to chat with us today. Really, you have a really interesting background. Having said that, man, do you mind just telling us kind of a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got here?
sure. So again, I thank everyone to be watching this podcast, and thank you, Nick, and your team to really invite me for this podcast, and I hope to bring a lot of value to the listeners, right?
Hmm.
I have been in the business of IT technology for about 25 years now. I'm hardcore electronic engineer by education, been certified as a CIO by the department OPM of
Hmm.
US federal government. As well, I've been owner of a consulting firm, which we having corporate client as well as federal government. So federal government was more at the later stage of the business. Uh, Managing about 150 people at a given moment of time was always my area or my ally, right?
Hmm.
Um, on the technology side, I've been very thankful to the people who I've been connected with. They have been guide and mentor to kind of lead me to uh, different technological phases of your last 30 years, right? If you look at the internet, then you get the Y2K problem, then the come advent of the Web 2.0, mobile. I'm just setting this up because in this will come up slowly in our next podcast. And I've been very fortunate, you can say, to really take this role of a leadership as well as be hands-on on the technology for so many years. So I hope to bring some value to your listeners on this today's podcast.
Absolutely, man. I'm sure you will. And so, obviously, with a very in-depth background in technology, having touched technology and on the management side, having touched a
Yeah,
lot of different things, both from a private sector and a public sector perspective, how did you go from, the rise of the internet and, and telecom and wireless and cell phones to
yeah.
AI?
Sure. So technically, if you look at my first phase of my life, really, I was just a regular student who came out of the college, and
Mhm.
then I was stumbled upon the Y2K because that's when I came out of the college.
Mhm.
Internet was always on when I first had my email created. That I still have that email. Imagine about that, right?
Mhm.
So my first foray was in the CRM space. Siebel CRM was really getting into the groove. I was a developer, and I'm very proud to be a developer. That laid the foundation for my initial technological power as to like a flourish into how I can be more customer centric.
Mhm.
When I came here in US, Y2K was in what do you say is in a it was in a high intense more you can say intensely it was being
Mhm.
implemented. Y2K, I came right in the turn of the century, and then the morphing of the industry towards Web 2.0 was really shifting our gear from your hardcore cyber development to managing the teams, and
Mhm.
then being a technical lead and going on and for forth. When I got my green card, that's when I really started thinking about creating my own company. That was around 2007 or so. And that's when I started getting into building my own business right from the scratch. I didn't have any help to begin with, but
Mhm.
fortunately, with the grace of God, I had people who helped me around, mentored me around. And always one of my mentor told me, whatever may come, you can manage people anytime you want, but never leave the technology away. So I would be always connected with technology that helped me to go into even today when I can get on the Python, build some model, and then have a AI agent created in no time.
Mhm.
So I want to be in that flow, and I will continue to be in that flow. Hmm?
Oh, fantastic, man. Fantastic. And so how did you go? Explain will you tell me a little bit about your interest in AI and
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you've
yeah.
done? And I know you've created your own framework as well.
Framework.
Could you
Yeah.
introduce that framework also?
Yeah. So, if you go back just in last decade, there was a lot of discussion about cybersecurity. You would say fraud detection, fraud analytics, so on and so forth, and everything. And then even if you look at the rise of the Facebook and the engines, the ML machine learning engines that got developed, there were a lot of data involved in it, right? So when creation of the data, that was done by the people who were using it, but what you would do with the data, that was used to be a lot of my projects, and they were bordering on the data analytics, understanding the conversion of data into data warehouse, and then the cloud was there in the picture, and then you can have a machine learning algorithm on Python, try to identify what are the models that can be worked on. So it was a very complex in last decade, right? And I went through this all, fortunately, because I had those projects to run with.
Mhm,
Uh, Come fast forward in 2020 when the whole world was almost shut down, and I had just sold my company. So I
mhm,
took some sabbatical, and it was not planned, well, planned by God, but not by me.
mhm,
I had an offer in 2019, end 2019, and then I exited out, and by January, February, I was out of the company. So
mhm,
it was just like luck. I don't know. It was a luck. I didn't plan it. I had no idea about this. And then, of course, I took a sabbatical. That propelled me to think about, okay, what would happen when the AI comes in the picture? Because
mhm,
ML's logical situation was to move on to AI, right? So this is how the seeds of creating own process-oriented AI started. So that's where Terran AI framework took the shape, form, and I'm right now in front of the lot of corporate people to kind of go into how we can use Terran AI for benefit of their company.
mhm.
Hmm?
Absolutely. And how does it differ from some of the other existing frameworks that have been out there?
Okay, so that's good question, Nick. So look at the way the software technology works, right? It stands on three-legged stool. Okay, one is your people, another one is process, and third one is technology.
Mhm,
Shifting the technology at every moment of time. If you look at the past 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when a software development cycle was as a process was created, people got trained on those, and then started using technology for developing applications. So that was your PMP. They became very high-end professionals who are trained in those PMPs. Once you pass the decade, you come back to 2010, 9, 10. That's when the agile started kicking up. You
mhm,
know, that's because you moved on into a fast development, software development cycle. You wanted accountability, and you wanted a big feedback loop, because the technology improved over a period of time. That's when the DevOps came in the picture. Now, the 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 shift in the technology again from your Web 2.0 and mobile apps to now AI is occurring right now.
mhm,
And then I'm in the advantage position to understand, okay, I've lived these two stages of the shift in the process. And you need a third process, not creating a brand new one, but of course building upon what you had in the agile, and then
mhm,
moving into creating a very responsible process implementation. So that's how the strengths of the agile, or you can say strength of the AI is to learn from your corporate learnings that you had from before, and then implement that within your structure by adopting a new process that is called Terran AI framework.
mhm. Can you explain that to me as if I was a 4-year-old?
Yeah, sure, sure. Okay, let's do that. Very sure. Well, let's go to that. So, Terran AI framework, it's an acronym, and that every acronym has got its own word. But that's like a level bottom below, right? When you
Mhm,
actually implement it. Let me take you a step above, or some about 36,000 feet above level, and give you a broad idea or the broad principles of what is Terran AI framework, right? So, in the frame of AI, if you think you have to innovate always. Okay.
Mhm,
AI is everything about innovation. You're finding the small gap you find to enhance your customer loyalty, to enhance your customer retention, to enhance everything that is related to a customer. It's customer centric. If
mhm,
you take that as an example, if you don't innovate, you can never basically move on into a higher state of your profitability. Okay, that's
mhm,
one of the criteria. So innovation is our first fundamental principle. Then after you innovate, what you do, you kind of want to implement it, right? So you implement those things, and then after you implement it, you integrate with your outside ecosystem, your world around. So simple three steps: innovate, implement, and integrate. That is a bedrock principle of Terrain AI framework. You
mhm,
know, within the framework, again, you break up the innovation phase into your smaller steps, where you create a business case, you do a hypothesis of all your possible outcomes that you would want to have, uh,
mhm,
understand what are the biases and the fairness numbers that you can feed into your model system, choose the model, right? And then create an MVP. MVP is a minimum value product.
mhm,
So that basically that activity around is more of a basic principle of innovation. Then you rigorize, right? You rigorize means you uh, make a model, a self-learning model.
mhm,
You feed them with the real life data. You feed the prompt engineering in a way that it identifies what are the false negatives, what are the positives, and so on and so forth, right? So there's those kind of all the engineering work on your data through model learning is what happens in the implement stage, and that is rigor of your training. Then you move to your integrate. Integrate is where the envelopes come in the picture. The DevOps, the envelopes, and all the possible functions of integrating with the outside world that comes in the picture. So this is the broad angle about innovate, implement, and integrate in the Terraria framework. Hmm?
absolutely. No, man,
It-
I really appreciate it, and that makes, makes a lot of sense because when you start thinking about, and this is a layperson, right? I'm not an expert like yourself, as a layperson, when you start thinking about implementing a lot of these new technologies, obviously, and it's something that I see constantly, and I talk to, and all the experts I talk to reiterate is that, and I've seen it coming out from the government and the VA specifically. I can think of
Mhm.
like a source of SOT or RFI that came out a couple of months ago around looking for AI use cases. And, they specifically said in there that, listen, we don't really have an idea about what is out there, but that's why we're doing this. We're looking at we're doing market research now to try to understand what is out there from a technology perspective. But
Yeah.
like they only had like a couple of guidances, and one of them was we're not just going to implement AI just to implement AI in the
Yes.
environment.
Mhm.
They were looking, from what I remember, they were looking for AI tools to help their providers,
Yeah.
help them do their job more efficiently. And so it makes a lot of sense that you would have a very structured process to identify the use case and then create the MVP and walk everybody through that,
Yes.
which is really great, man. It's fantastic.
Thank
So how do you I know you mentioned, responsible AI at one point,
Yeah.
what are some of the guide rails or guardrails that you put around
Yeah.
these AI products, and these AI services in a framework, at a framework level,
Sure.
to ensure that, that it is responsibly developed? And then how do you define responsibility and responsibility specifically as it
Correct.
relates to AI?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So, see, responsible AI is kind of divided into two parts, right? One part is really your people who are the team. I would say not people. I would say team who is implementing or creating the AI agents or the AI they are developing that AI model technically. So those are the people. The people should be right. The team should be the right team. When I say right team means they should have the ethical responsibility. They should have the training to understand, how what are the compliances that they need to follow. So that team structure should be there. That's what Terrain AI kind of does the first thing when the framework is implemented. And then, of course, when you are implementing that in a shape and form of selecting the data, then whether the data privacy is taken care of.
Mhm.
That's one of the area of your of the team being ethical in their approach, right? And then when they are creating an agent using set of models within that MVP which they are building, or to fulfill the hypothesis that they have formed from the business case. So these three, four activities that are being worked out by the people, if the people themselves are not in that shape and mindset of being ethical, then the whole case of innovation is lost, right? So that's one area where we need to provide guidance. And when I say we, means as a society as such, and in which our federal government, that is our White House, has come up with a very, very fundamental guidelines. It's called the AI Bill of Rights. That's
Mhm.
by US President, right? And that around that those are five guidelines which provides the fundamental understanding about how an AI can be implemented ethically. So
Mhm.
for the benefit of the user, let me kind of list down
Yeah.
those five principles, right?
Mhm.
One is development of safe and effective systems. That's 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 the core about what technology you are going to use
Mhm.
to develop that, right? Second one is, and this is the beautiful one, algorithmic discrimination protection. So
Mhm.
when I say algorithmic, you might implement a bias that is really, I'll take an example. Okay, let's take an
Mhm.
example.
Please.
So you are building an AI agent, and which allows the which that AI agent should not do a redlining for a mortgage loan application, right?
Mhm.
I think this is a very fundamental what do you say? I will not say practice, but it does occur, and we have to be and we have to be not biased for those redlining. We should avoid redlining, right? So that's one algorithm that is called an algorithmic discrimination.
Mhm.
System should avoid that, right? Then data privacy. Every data of a customer or a vendor, everything should be private. So that's another third principle that comes in the AI Bill of Rights.
Mhm.
Then notices and explanation. Now you see there are a lot of terms and conditions that you see, and you are just forced to say click, yes,
Mhm.
I accept, and then it goes through, right?
Yep.
Now the Bill of Rights kind of goes beyond. It tells us that okay, when you are using certain a variation of a product, you should be able to explain why this is showing up.
Mhm.
Not at the time of just terms and condition and forget about it. It's basically at the time when the decision is being made. So
Mhm.
nowadays, if you see there are a lot of pop-ups that ask you even when you are trying to browse something. This is because of the explanation it gives. And I would encourage everybody to kind of read those small snippets. Don't just skip it away, right? Read those things. Those are notices and explanation. And
Mhm.
finally, of course, what happens if the whole world of software and AI, it just kind of does not want to work, right? Or there's a electric failure
Mhm.
or something happens, right? And it's shut down.
Right.
So there are companies to mitigate and that kind of risk. They need to come up with a human alternatives, considerations, and fallbacks. Like a call center just breaks off. You don't
Right.
want AI chatbot to just kind of go random. So there
Mhm.
should be human in a loop. And this is the new concept, human in a loop that has to be in part of the uh,
Mhm.
mechanism. So this is what is AI Bill of Rights. Those are five principles laid out by our government. So
Mhm.
a team following those five principles is really leads to responsible AI. And of course, Terran AI framework has actually embraced those five principles and implemented every bit of it in its every phases of its implementation. You know,
Mhm.
so that's how I think a corporate entity could really, really implement their AI in a responsible and
Mhm.
ethical way for the society, for the benefit of the society. Hmm?
Yeah, man, 100%. And I love the emphasis on human in the loop, both in, the AI Bill of Rights. And then in a lot of folks that I've talked to, yourself included, who've talked about like make sure that we have a human in the loop. And I mean, I've been looking, yeah, I mean, a great example is I've been looking and thinking about creating or using some generative AI tools around
Mhm.
writing clinical notes within for our, for my mental health practice.
Right.
And just looking at different ones, I haven't found one that I like because my concern
Mm.
is, and I'm sure you've seen this, and if you haven't, I'm 100% sure you've seen it. Like I've seen it on link like like I put some post up on LinkedIn and somebody uses AI to make a comment, right? Or it's in
Yeah.
or they use AI to write their resume, and it'll like
Yes.
say, and there'll be something like in parentheses or brackets saying insert something specific about what was said here, and they don't, right? Or
True.
elaborate on your experience here, and it'll say,
Yeah.
we're managed to create improve uptime by, and I'll say X% still, because they never went in and actually read it, right?
Read it. Yes. Correct.
And that's what scares me, is that some of the most interesting applications I've seen out there,
Yeah.
they force humans into the loop, into the workflow, and that's built into it, right? And I like, and then you start thinking like, for my mental health company, we have an accrediting body, we have state specific mental health regulations that we have to write our notes to, and make sure that we're touching all these things, and it has to be in a certain format. And like, I don't trust, and it's not like, I'm not going to say, my specific practitioners. I don't, my concern is that people that are busy and have a lot going on are going to become over reliant on a tool like that,
Yeah.
that doesn't force you to write and rewrite the note. And because I'm here, like, I believe that you can use it to get 70% of the way there, right? Most
True.
of the time. But it's that last 25 to 30% that is concerning. And when you start looking at implementing these tools as an organization,
Yeah.
like, my concern is very simply that we would end up, there'd be an audit, right? And Medicaid would come in, and they'd come in, and they'd like, that'd be the chart they pull, and they would see, oh, look, like, and what are you guys doing? And then all of a sudden they open the floodgates, and
Yeah.
when they start looking, who knows what they're going to find, right? Because they're going
Yes.
to go over it with
Correct.
a fine tooth comb, because that's what they do.
True.
Um, and like, my concern is opening up to that kind of liability, but then also, how do you make because it has to base it off of something. How do you ensure that the AI is listening, is HIPAA compliant, that everybody that's using it has agreed to use it and agrees and signs off on it,
Yes.
right? And there's just a lot of, I have a lot of hesitation as a leader and as a CEO of a couple of companies, to around implementing something like that without the proper guardrails, but also,
True.
I start like, without the proper integrations into the system, right? I
Mm.
wouldn't want, for instance, to have that separate from my EHR, and then people can like take their notes, take a transcript of
Yeah.
the session and drop it into the AI tool, and
Yeah.
then just copy and paste that and drop it
Oh
into
my
the,
God.
like,
Yeah.
that's what I could see something like that happening. But how could you,
Yes.
and I know there's a way to do it where you could build it into the EHR and integrate it all so that it can be turned on and
Yeah.
used. And there's a workflow that you have to work through. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know of any tools that can do that
I
yet,
see.
right?
Yeah, you are so right. Nick,
Mhm,
actually, there are no tools right now available. We can do that. But, they will come up very
mhm,
soon because I am involved with a couple of uh, uh, let's say innovators. I will say they are startups actually.
mhm,
What I'm working with is in C4 AI. It's
mhm,
a part of a UMBC. And we were actually whiteboarding this particular, not this exact solution, but for a medical industry, what are the gaps? We were trying to identify what are the gaps. This was the second in the line whiteboarding that we were doing, and one of the use case what you just mentioned, it just came out, and
mhm,
said, yes, we should be doing this, and that's why when you were saying this, I was able to correlate, even though I didn't know that you were in this practice as well.
mhm,
And I said, that's great. That I mean, we have a live example in which this kind of human in the loop is required, but also it is scary that you don't expect that whether whatever you have done is compliant with the laws of the government, and that leads to more trouble.
Right.
So just to mitigate those risks itself,
Hmm.
I think we have to be responsible and choose the team that's working for generating those AI model, that they should be ingrained in their ethical behaviors.
Hmm.
That's the important part of the part of our AI approach, I would say. And of
Hmm.
course, I want to promote Terrain, so Terrain
Yeah.
inculcates those things, because I do understand and I built Terrain, so I know this is very important for a team.
Hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. I appreciate that, and I'd be interested to see kind of what you guys come up with from that
Yes,
perspective. Because I'm always looking. I have my eyes and ears out for something along those lines where it can
yes,
be, where it can be done and done right, and then again, but then you also have concerns about how
true.
does how does the AI how does the model itself further train and refine itself if it's not training on existing patient data. And how
Right.
can and again, I'm not sure. Can you blind out all personalized, all PII and then use it? Where does I just don't know, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll work it out. So how about
Yeah,
that?
man. I mean, now we're talking we need an attorney, man. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure your rate's high, Andy, but not that high.
Very true, Dick. Very true. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
man. So what as you kind of move through this world of, helping companies get ready to implement AI solutions, man, what are some of the factors and some of the things that you look at to determine whether or not a company is ready to implement AI into their environment?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, uh, see what I have seen,
Hmm.
um, let me kind of take our audience to little bit before our before even, I mean, okay, when the time when PC was became ubiquitous, right? So late 80s, when PC became a use for everyone in started being in everybody's house. Of course, in the organization as a mainstay. Then came the internet, that was in late 90s. Those were actually the bedrocks of the future technology that started the revolution, the industrial revolution. I would say the technology revolution started in year 2000 and beyond, right?
Hmm.
The human as a race became ready for adapting and creating new technological excellence since that time period. And I'll tell you, every one of you, me, as well as anyone who has lived in this era, we should be blessed. We must have done some great good work in our past lives, that
Hmm.
we are in this age of innovation. And so we were ready from that point of view. Okay. If you look at the micro level at the organization, every
Hmm.
organization is within a ecosystem of their own domain, right? So there is that every domain is touched upon. Within that domain, there are few organizations within that domain who are leaders, who are the followers, and those Gartner's four quadrant, wherever they are placed into, right?
Hmm.
So, and they have their in the industry about IT industry specifically supporting that domain, and those IT consulting firm or those domain experts is where each ecosystem will be had to identify their readiness into where they are into, right? So that's one thing. If you go granularly into, and let me go back again. So if you for example you take a medical domain is quite advanced in spending a lot of IT money, right?
Hmm.
They are more advanced in spending funds in IT and keeping themselves updated. So they
Hmm.
will be ahead in their ecosystem, will be much ahead in implementing and adapting AI. Whereas there would be other industries, say for example, a manufacturing unit who is just paving roads, for example, just paving roads. They don't have much IT. They have ITs which are very much like a software as a service. They will come up in a later part of time, right? So it
Hmm.
all depends upon which domain you are in. So if you look at the federal government, they are pushing ahead with a lot of IT spend, and specific domains will be much ahead and in that time. Now, if you go to the organization level, really speaking, organizationally, how adapt a executive or a CEO or the sponsor is, if how sponsorship is, right? If they say, oh, nothing is going to happen, we will wait for another 5 years, and then whatever comes up, we will adapt it, right? So those are the ones who are going to really face challenging times, say within 1 year, and that too very quickly. Okay,
Mhm.
because the pace it will not be the same that was in 80s, that was in 90s, or even that was in 2010s and 20s. The
Mhm.
pace of just and the technology hitting you fast is going to be very fast and it's going to be very lethal.
Mhm.
So again, the executive should understand that, okay, they need to adapt as soon as possible, even if not do a big IT spend, but at least hire few people who can kind of create a strategy for their company so that
Mhm.
they are ready when things are when they are ready financially. I know the interest rate is high, so the spend is very expensive. Because I've been a CEO, I know how things works from the other side of the balance sheet, right? So, but still they should portion keep that executive sponsorship alive, right?
Mhm.
And finally, if you go one step more down below, availability of data. Data is the bedrock of your whole AI. Okay.
Mhm.
If you don't have a data ownership, your data is ownership of an organization with somebody else, you just pack up your bags, okay? Because that somebody else is going to suck each part of your business out of you, right? So data ownership is very important, as like privacy after implementing AI, but ownership in the beginning itself is important. If you don't have much of a data, or you can create your own data, and that is called synthetic data generation. It's a very much a secure part of creating your own data within an organization, which of course I'm very good at. And
Mhm.
basically that allows the organization to be structurally ready to implement AI within their system, their organization. So if you look at the readiness of an organization, it is not just dependent upon just its own self, right? It has
Mhm.
to be dependent and in a various levels. And I think the ecosystem for most of our ecosystem for most of our society is
Mhm.
right now, So executive sponsorship is where right now you need to take the leadership into. Hmm?
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So what are, obviously it sounds like leadership is super important, but also making sure you have the right funding and the right
Yeah.
organizational attitudes. What are some signs that an organization just isn't ready for AI overall?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So let's dwell into that part, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you look at your organization, organization basically is built by your culture, right? Culture, because those culturally good organization, they go a long way. And so I'm just taking it as the bedrock of any organization that is created, built, where people work into a common mission, common goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
AI is going to be a little different. The difference is going to be that so far an organization who is a laggard, or even if they are leaders, they don't innovate to a scale where uh, they just have to be good enough to automate things. That goes to be the culture within an organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come AI, there will be a cultural shift into being more innovative. You need to have a more innovative mindset. You need to automate even further beyond the imagination, right? And then you have to be more hyper customer. Hyper customer means hyper personalization of a customer. So again, the second part of your success, or setting an organization themselves for the success is, first is a cultural change, then your customer-centric approach. And the third one, of course, is your ethical compliance management.
Mm-hmm.
Compliance management is going to be a field in itself, where you will have a lot of lawyers who are ingrained in ethics, who are certified in ethics, and where terrain comes in the picture, where we are defined a ethic terrain ethic controller. Okay, so we have defined an ethics controller certification program, where basically we'll be able to do that. I can talk about it later on. Okay, but just to give you a third portion of the third part of culturally ready and setting up the organization for success is culture, your customer centric, and then your compliance management, right?
Mhm,
So these are the main mechanics, I would say, where if an organization builds up a strategy to uh, to to enhance their capabilities of culture, customer centricness, and compliance, they would be ready. They will be setting themselves up for the success.
mhm.
Okay, so this is how I see that. I see this is how it would AI is affecting these the organizations. Hmm?
Mhm. Okay. No, absolutely. And then also I think, we need to have it's a robust data infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the ability to, capture and utilize existing internal organizational data. And
Mm.
so I would guess the folks that don't have that infrastructure or the personnel to do it have a lot of work to do. Whereas
Yeah.
those that do, and I think, I mean, you and I can both name them, like the big ones that have been like the big IT companies and internet companies that have been around forever that have that, like, you think the
Yeah.
Googles and the Microsoft, the FANGs of the world, right?
Yes.
They're,
Thanks.
they're way ahead on a lot of this because, I mean, first, I mean, they've been using AI for a long time, just
Yeah.
not specifically generative AI, different
Correct.
kind, whether it's, what route you're going to drive and having it update in real time because of existing traffic conditions, like a Waze, which Google owns, or a Google
True.
Maps,
True.
or a Netflix with their suggestions, right? Like I would assume like a lot of that's like AI at just like a different
True.
kind of AI. And then how do you, but as you look at a lot of, so those folks are way ahead, right? And I
Mhm.
think, and I didn't read a huge amount about it, but I think I saw there was just an antitrust ruling against Google as it relates to,
Yes, they
um,
lost
as,
it.
yeah,
Mhm.
as it relates to their search business and everything like that. And I mean, I
True.
don't, do you know much about that or not? Not at the moment.
Yeah, I can shed some light on it.
Mhm,
Just for the benefit and the time which we are in. I want to kind of give my 2 cents, and also share some historical aspect of this. So Google lost their case on basically on the verge on being broken up. But see, I don't think we need to be scared about this, because sometimes the two parts can be much more valuable than the whole, right? So
mhm,
that's like amoebas, two amoebas kind of create to become two amoebas rather than just one amoeba. And the technology companies are typically like this. They are basically innovation hubs, so they can morph themselves up into a bigger entity. So the same thing happened in case of Microsoft. If you look in 1997, 98, when they became very big. So in the turn of the century, they were slapped with the antitrust and their marketing practices, as well as there was the call where they need to be broken up. So typically speaking, what happened to Microsoft? The stock went down for some time, but
mhm,
then they figured it out that if you break up the Microsoft, then the real backbone of our day-to-day life, that is all your OS and everything, that would get impacted. So and it's not that Microsoft was doing some interfering something in our business, right? So the Supreme Court actually overturned it, and then
mhm.
it became like, no, it became like, okay, let's get on with the business. This is what I think would happen to Google, because in the search business, even though Google is leaders, 70 to 80 leader, but there are so many other search firms which
Mhm,
are which are built up on Google, right? So it's more pseudo political to kind of say that we can survive without a search. We want another competitor for search. I mean, if I have a Google, are they going to have a different algorithm for the same search? I don't think so. So
mhm.
this is how I think the narrative built up would kind of fade away in process of time. Uh, yeah.
I agree with you, especially with the makeup of the Supreme Court as it is now, right? I agree with you, but I also think, historically, when you look at the last 125, 130 years, breaking up conglomerates is not inherently a bad thing, right? Like
Yeah.
Standard Oil was broken up, right?
True.
Standard Oil was broken up. They were
Yes.
broken up into Exxon, into Mobil, into
Yeah.
BP, into maybe BP. I don't know about that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
definitely Exxon, Mobil. I think City was another, like City,
Yes.
Amco, there's a bunch of them, right? And they've
Yes.
all reconsolidated, right?
Yeah.
And reconsolidated, but like now there's a bunch of really, really big oil companies out there that
Yes, I tell
where
you.
and I mean, you also look at, Bell, was it Bell Atlantic, the phone
Yes.
company? They
AT&T.
got broken up, and
Yeah.
then like they got broken up into like Singular, which and AT&T and Verizon,
Yes.
and they're all giants still. Well, they're all giants
Yes.
again, and
Yes.
there was, and so I don't necessarily think that it's 100% a bad thing, but as you look
Yeah.
at things, again at a macro scale over
Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
I think my biggest my biggest concerns in and around having all of that data in one hand in
Yeah.
one company's hands is that it stifles competition. You look at somebody like a Facebook, right, and what they've been
Yeah.
able to do over the last 15 years as it relates to investing in Instagram and having a big piece of their biggest competitor, and then WhatsApp, and then all these, like, I mean, they have all kinds of them, and then and what does that do to the competitive markets, the competitive landscape, and how do we ensure that we are fostering competitive, fostering businesses being competitive and
Yeah.
maintaining that level of competition, because I think that's inherently a good thing and is a
Yeah.
feature, not a bug.
Bug. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Very true. Very true.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, you are bang on right? So you have in some industries that needs to be broken up because they would become so monopolistic to kind of stifle the economy itself. If you look at Google, they generate so much of money, and but they reinvest that money into either buying the stock back, which is not really investment, but is giving you value to the investor. A second thing is they are putting another big chunk in innovation, right?
Mhm.
Innovating to a point where they basically have solved some of the most difficult mathematical and physics problems, which a human or you can say cannot do really, right? So they are built machines
Mhm.
to that level. So yes, you're right. I mean, there is the pros and cons. In the scenario of Google, there has to be guardrails around them. I would say, to hold their feet to fire that they don't do any malpractices of
Yeah.
even for Facebook or even any of the FANGs, they should not be doing malpractices. They should be hold on to their fire to the feet. But breaking them, of course, will can lead to some other things,
Mhm.
which kind of you never know. You cannot predict.
Right. 100%, right? Especially when you look at how pro big business yeah, specifically the American government's been since, like, I want to say for the last 50 years or so.
Mm,
Really starting in, I want to say, in the 80s under Reagan, with all those tax cuts, and how that, and
yeah.
the myth of trickle down economics, and how that then that has led to this environment of behemoth companies, right?
Yes.
And you're right though. When you look at reinvesting in things like R&D, that's great. I think Apple's done a great job of a lot of
Right.
that. I don't
Yes.
think, they've never been the cutting edge and bleeding edge of technology. What they're great at, though, and I say this as somebody that has used both Microsoft and like Google phones and
True.
tablets, and is all Apple now and has been for some
Yes.
time, is they're great at integrate at the user experience piece of it.
Yes.
Like, I
Beautiful.
I don't know if you remember how difficult it used to be to transfer your data from one cell phone to the other cell phone.
Of
You
course,
know,
I remember that. Yes.
you had to go to the Verizon store or wherever and have them plug them into each other because they had the special cable and they could push
Special
the
cable.
button, right? But now, like the last time I got a new iPhone, I just like held one at the other, and then,
Yes.
it just did it all. And then I had the same phone with the same settings,
Yeah.
right? And like, I could copy on my phone and paste onto my computer and vice versa. Like, I didn't know I needed that until I had it. And I was like, this is amazing, right?
Wow. Yes.
But then you think, like, and I remember this, and this is over 10 years ago now, that,
Yes.
Siri was an acquisition, right? The Siri
True.
voice that we talked to, that
True.
was an acquisition for folks. And because at one point it was a standalone app that you could download from the App Store, and then Apple
Correct.
bought them and integrated them into it. And now I think they're going to do away with it, like Siri in its existing form, and have one backed by Chat GPT potentially,
Correct.
which is all
Yes.
kinds of funny considering Microsoft has a stake in that. But it is what it is.
Yes, yes. I want to share a tidbit of when our Steve Jobs was out and out of his company, and the company was in shambles. I'm talking
Mhm,
about Apple, and Steve Jobs was at Pixar. Microsoft, Bill Gates, he actually put $300 million, gave it to Steve Jobs, and said, "Hey, let's begin to build up the Apple again."
mhm,
So that's when Steve Jobs came up. I mean, he used to take no salary at all. Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs, the great
mhm,
guy. So that those things, when you said uh, Microsoft owns some part of Apple, the genesis was like
mhm.
20 years ago when he started.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, they are all connected with each other.
Mm, absolutely. It's all interconnected, right? And you mentioned earlier that, we're blessed to live in this time, and I 100% agree with you. I think that
Yes,
I'm a fan of history, right? I'm not a historian, I'm a fan of history. I like
yes,
history. And when you
yes.
start thinking about like people that lived 100 years ago, right? So we're
Uh-huh.
talking the 1920s, or call it 120 years ago, the
Yes,
1900s. The vast majority of them, their day-to-day lives had more in common with people that lived 1,000 years before them than they do with us, right?
yes,
And
yes,
that's not everybody, right? But that's most people now. And you
yeah,
think about, and it's only been really since not the Industrial Revolution, since the Enlightenment, since the 1600s, I
yeah,
would say really, that we have seen technology,
yes.
move in an exponential fashion, right?
True,
Where
true.
we can no longer envision people that lived before us being able to do things that we can't,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But for the
absolutely.
vast majority of human history, that wasn't the case, right? And you start, in a to get really deep into it, he's a Greek gentleman who was fighting
Mhm.
in ancient Persia, right? The Persians, when they couldn't beat the Greeks during
Yeah,
you saw the struggles of Darius and Xerxes and all these folks, and they started hiring Greek mercenaries, and the Greeks at one point were running out of Persia, and they came across,
mm,
at the time, they were destroyed ancient Assyrian cities, right?
yes,
With
yes.
walls bigger than anything that Greece could have made at this point. And I
Mm,
can just imagine, like, what would it be like if we all of a sudden found a civilization that was more, or ruins of a civilization that were more advanced than we were? What would that be like? What is that
mm.
experience like as a human? I find it
Yes.
fascinating.
Yeah, yeah,
Off
absolutely.
topic now, man, but
I tell you, you're off. Yeah, exactly. Other than the podcast, let's have topic to talk about this. I have so much of reading done on this
Mhm.
topic, but we will be digressing and then boring our
Absolutely, man.
So I
100%.
I am in a history class now. Oh my God, they
Mhm.
just go off. So
Yeah,
let's
man.
talk about that sometime later.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, I can't. I'm looking forward to it, Andy. That'll be great, man. But yeah, as you start the back to AI though, right? Back to AI. As we start thinking about AI and implementation between different business sectors, and the ones that have the underlying readiness to work, and the ones that don't have the underlying readiness available,
Yeah.
and then what unique uh, challenges and opportunities
Yeah.
exist each.
Sure, sure, absolutely sure. I got a question. So basically, when we just mentioned about different ecosystem, and then within that system, basically the domains they start adapting AI. A CIO comes up and thinks about it. Okay, I need to kind of start doing the AI. But
Mhm,
the best part of this, the when you start creating the strategy, you kind of really have to identify what are the challenges that might be there, right? So you
mhm,
start from the Elon Musk very famous first principle thinking, right? So you kind of try to come up with a very simplistic business cases, and then try to delete the fluff.
mhm,
This is fluff is my word. He uses something else. So
mhm,
basically, I kind of like that system where you kind of delete all those things. My experience now in deleting and simplifying and oversimplifying, I found that there are many challenges that comes in a CIO's way, right? First one I would say is the the executive team would just say something, and then there is one set of people would align with one set of expectation, another one would have some different goals, so the project goals are not clear. There are misaligned expectations. That basically is when the initial stage when you start creating a business case, right? So of course Terran helps in creating those aligned business cases. Third one is your data quality.
Mhm,
Everyone thinks that my baby is the best, and of course every baby is the best. But
mhm,
if put that analogy to your data has to be complete to really give you a very very thoughtful, or you can say a productive output, right? I would say productive output, because you can massage the data the way you want, but technically speaking, the output should be productive in a way that it should be positive for the company balance sheet. So data quality and accessibility of users for that data is again another challenge they use. Third one is selection of model.
mhm,
Model selection can be biased in the first place. Some person who is strong in using, say, linear regression, and is not strong in using a Bayes theorem based model, they have certain commonality, and they said, okay, let's use this for that. That biases that creeps into as a CIO or CEO or executive leadership, you have to understand that people who are there are not bringing their own personal biases
mhm,
into the system. So again, you have terrain framework where you do the hypothesis, and yet in the phase R, we basically remove those biases out of it. So
mhm,
that's the third one. Fourth one, of course, lack of trust, adoption, whether this work will be good, not good. AI agent is helpful, not helpful. There we have the phase A, that is in the later part, where you do a full thorough 360-degree ethics checks, feedbacks, and surveys and everything. So that's the fourth one, lack of trust and adoption. Fifth one is finally every CIO will think that, with this I will capture the entire market. You know, they will think that, okay, I can deploy it anywhere and everywhere and it will work. That's where the mindset comes into a challenging mode, where deployment and scaling of your deployments is where the challenges rise, right? So how you scale it and what are the steps to scale it? And I will tell you, there is science behind scaling your AI deployment from step by step. Okay,
mhm,
instead of that, it will be too long to talk about in this podcast. Maybe we'll
mhm.
do it sometime else, right? So
Okay.
these five challenges really helps. Understanding these five challenges really helps to kind of create a borderline, create a limitations around, what are our expectation and how we go about implementing the AI within our organization. You know?
Yeah, fantastic, man, and I mean, obviously, I think you're really speaking more to, like, the commercial sectors there. How does
Yes.
that differ when you start talking on the national security side? Whether it's not like, defense and intelligence, kind of what additional considerations and concerns do those folks have that others don't?
Sure, sure. I will tell you, in corporate world, basically private world, there is more amount of what do you say, honesty, I would say. Okay, let me put it that way.
Mhm,
There are more tighter control because they are afraid about what would happen if they can bring down the company down. So hence they are more afraid of about implementing AI. Okay, or rather preservation of data and everything. Whereas I have seen within the federal government space, there is a lot of let, let it happen what it happens. There's a lot of let go things happens. This is my personal experience. It's not to blame anyone, but it's just to kind of bring out the understanding about the data is sometimes not sometimes I would say it's not secure within the public sector.
mhm,
That's where the biggest amount of national security consideration or a concern needs to ally, right? If there was in if you look at maybe about 7 8 years ago and even go beyond, there were multiple instances where OPM data was breached into. There
Mhm,
was there was US State Departments, many databases were breached into. It came from out of the country, right? I don't know which country it came from, but it was heavily reported. It came from out of the country where the cybersecurity breaches happened, and there might be many more which we don't know, right? That's because the mindset that goes into thinking that okay, nothing happens, everything is fine, you know.
mhm,
So that's one national security that needs to be taken, and it should be taken at the CIO and office at the public sector, where they will have robust, robust controls to kind of permeate the philosophy of strict access and strict controls around
mhm,
that data, right? So that's one part. If you move on into the AI part, the people who are actually working the into the AI agent, uh, the biases and fairness. Now, this can be controlled really, not I would say control can be implemented rather by a very good training. So allow the create robust training materials, create robust uh, response mechanism material, train the staff in a way that they don't allow their outside biases to get permeated within their decisions that they make within it. US federal sector, they already have so many of this kind of trainings, but I have myself seen, right? Because when I was doing agile implementation, I used to build up on those existing material where the biases and fairness used to exist in those. Just it needs to be updated towards the towards embracing of AI, and
mhm,
in a different I would say different angle, not
mhm,
angle, I would say different point of view or different vision. So that's another part of your bias and fairness, and it's a national security concern. Why? Because an individual can be an individual can do a certain thing unintentionally, right? And then it can lead to a very bigger butterfly effect. So a butterfly just it's a basically a theory, right? Butterfly effect. Something big happens somewhere because of some small activity somewhere else, right? So
mhm,
so that we need to kind of control, right? And finally, there is a international coalition that is coming in collaboration about all the agents. It is not matured. It is not going to a level where it can be pronounced highly. But United Nations is working on creating an international collaboration about on the AI. So that's something, because it is a national security. Our government, public sector government, should be in the forefront to participate in those collaboration activities to
mhm,
really curtail any or curtail or mitigate any risk that comes up from our implementation and practices of AI. You
mhm.
know, so
Yeah.
this is how it goes.
Absolutely. I mean, I appreciate it. And I think that you're absolutely right, especially as you look at I think that the biggest risk still with a lot of these national security agencies, or these, not just the intel side, but the DoD and everything, individual people absolutely
Mm.
are, the biggest vulnerability still. You look at some
Yeah.
of the biggest data leaks over the last 15 to 20 years, and it's we all know their names, right? And
Yes.
we know their names because it was one person carrying information out.
Yeah.
And you can harden the system all you want, but people still need to work on that system,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think it's really fascinating. As we start looking forward and thinking about the future, Andy, where do you see AI evolving over the next, call it,
Yeah.
5 to 10 years? I think anything beyond like three to
Yeah.
5 years is just like, throwing darts at a board and seeing just
Sure.
guessing. But kind of what are your thoughts of the future?
Sure. Okay. So that's this is my favorite futuristic description of what the future would be, right? And certainly, everyone must have heard about robotic cars, everything that is automated within your life. I totally understand that, and I don't want to bore our people just to think about it, but go step back, step yourself backward. you have yourself as a person, as an individual, and then you have your different taste, your different likeness to multiple things in your life. Okay, even within a family, you will have two brothers, two sisters, they will have their own
Mhm,
way of life, right? Now, yeah, and but when a product is built in a factory and then it comes out on a store and it's sold, it is basically a kind of a demographic grouping of certain sets of characteristics that build up the product likeliness, and then it's targeted towards that demographic group, right? So
mhm.
this is how been going on for ages and ages together. Okay. So yes, you're right. So if you look at the way the future of a future life would be within our domain, right? So a person lives around uh, see, in future there are going to be robotic cars, everything would be automized.
Mhm,
Most things would be like you don't have to do many things, hard work in life, right? You have to focus on your own excellence. You know, you
mhm,
can write books, you can write so many things, and you can express yourself more expressively. That's part of a life that stays there. But now, major part of the life is consumptions, right? What we do with what how we consume everything from time to products and services, right? So
mhm,
let's look into that part of what how AI can impact. Now, in current times and all the times in past, where there was no AI, uh, how a product is created. The product is created built on a certain demographic aspect. Like there are two brothers, two sisters, not two brothers and two sisters will have their own taste, will have their own likeness, will have their own understanding about how they want to do things in their way. But now a product needs to be sold or services need to be sold, then there's a demographic grouping of those people who fall into a similar demographics, and then
mhm,
the product is built, services created to kind of to kind of sell them or service them or whatever. In AI, this is going to change. This is going to change fundamentally.
mhm,
It is going to be called, it is generative AI enables us to do hyper personalization for every domain. When I say
mhm,
domain, means every subject matter that you have. You come from cookies, chips, the way you consume it, the way the insurance works, the way the banking sector would come and service you. You know, everything will change. In that scenario, there will be people who are extraordinarily very brilliant. They don't know about it. They can be identified from the interactions with their own, I would call a Gemini or a chat GPT, OpenAI, a kind of agent, which is their own. Okay, it's like their assistant, and they will say, hey Andy, you have this skill. Did you know about this? Why don't you brush up and then start, and here are some of the things that can help you to kind of excel in this field. Now suddenly you are identifying yourself. So self-realization, self in improving the consciousness of our self, and in turn actually improving the consciousness of our entire society is what will lead into. And then you don't have to describe what the society would be, because really speaking, it's unfathomable that society can be anything. It can be highly violent, and it can just be degenerative in fact that we are not supposed to be living together. It can be that to that level, to a pendulum shift of everyone thinking to live ethical, live straight, understand the simplicity of life, adapt their wholeness, and be humble to say that we are part of this universe. Within this universe, we have to produce and provide something that gives back to the world, rather than just be a outright consumers all the time. So
mhm,
the trajectory of humanity would really decide on what the common good or common thinking would come up. But the source would be really your generative AI enabling a hyper personalization, which makes the individual realize that what is their potential in the future. So this is how I see the long term prospect of generative AI.
I love it. I love the optimism. It could probably go a lot of different ways. But where you're 100% right is the hyper personalization will absolutely, skyrocket over the next 10 to
Yes.
15 years. And it's fascinating. I wonder if that will, when you look at like social media and what it's done over the last, call it 2 decades, where as it relates to creating, essentially, creating sounding rooms where you're only talking to people that agree with you. I wonder, like, I could see it going that way where it amplifies that, but one would
Yes.
hope it wouldn't. We'll see, but, time will tell, Andy. But, before we wrap up, one thing that I like to chat
Mhm.
about, you have extensive experience on as an entrepreneur building and running companies. And so what man, if folks for folks out there that are, aspiring entrepreneurs or just starting out, what some advice you can give to folks, at a high level that might resonate with some people out there.
Yeah, sure, sure. So thank you so much for building that question. I will, for new entrepreneurs, young generation entrepreneurs of any age. Okay, if you are older enough, you will have the wisdom to understand that these kind of opportunities
Mhm,
were there in late 90s. Okay, and after the financial breakdown in 2011-12, there was another innovation spurt that happened. So late 90s, when the Web 2.0 came, and then again in 2011, and then now, right? Because see, even the innovation and the building up of a new companies, they form in a burst many times, and then of course things go down, and again it bursts up, right? So right now we are in that up mode, upward swing. Okay, so what is the real mantra of being having a successful product or a service, right? Innovator needs to identify what are the real world problems. You know,
mhm,
think about it, envision it, and then try to see whether it is practically able to service that real world problem. Try to solve that problem.
mhm,
Don't create a problem, okay? Just look around. You will find so many problems. A. Second part is there might be a existing company or a old technology serving that problem, right? You can kind of add your value saying that, okay, if I grab that business model and add my AI knowledge into this and then invent the cost to reduce it to the new customer and then sell it to the same customer who are already serviced by that old technology company, right? So that's another way of looking at servicing the real world problem.
mhm,
Second one is when whatever you do going further, have focus on ethical AI, ethical approach. Following principles of building ethical AI will not hurt you. In fact, it will always make you give you a lot of credibility to your company, because now even the financiers, or I would say the investors, would look at you as a person whom we can depend upon, right?
mhm,
Which is always the case before, but now it is much more profound because the propensity of finding somebody doing wrong things in current the age of AI is much faster. So
mhm,
if you do something wrong, wrong means I would say something crooked, right? People can find it very quickly, and that impact can be long lasting because it just stays on your digital footprint all
mhm.
the time, right?
Yep.
So just be careful about it, right? Whatever you do. I want to add one more twist to this. In fact, I want to give a little bit of more understanding about what are the areas where they can find the problem. Another
Mhm,
one thing is try to be vertical specific. Have a AI solution that that is a part for that is tailored for a domain, like what you said about healthcare, right? So it's for a domain that is
mhm,
for healthcare, or an education, AI for education, or some kind of a domain. Stick to that domain and create AI agents for those domains, right? So that's one way of one place where you can find a business model. Second one is, of course, cybersecurity is ubiquitous, and it will be needed across the
mhm.
domains, across the industries.
Yeah.
So if you have something really great in thinking about AI enhanced cybersecurity, that's another place. And finally, AI is also about marketplace. So if you can build a platform, right, like Amazon, which is an AI powered marketplace, you know, it can be a niche. It can be for a niche product, for a niche domain, but create a AI powered marketplace. That itself becomes your good business model. So
Mhm.
for entrepreneurs, don't lose heart. AI is actually going to give you much more tools to build much more better products and services. Just go for it.
Absolutely. 100%, man. And just to dovetail on that, on what you just said, to just go for it, I absolutely, absolutely suggest to people to just go out and try it, right? But, I mean, like when I got into healthcare, my only experience in healthcare at large was as a patient, right? And understand that like I had to learn a lot of, there was a lot of skills I had to learn. There's a lot of knowledge I had to learn. There's just a lot that I had to learn. It's continual, constant learning and evolving and learning and evolving and learning and evolving.
Yes.
And for a long time, I believed that stagnation is death, right? Like,
Yes.
and so, it's that, and then, also to add to what you said is that, it is without a doubt the hardest thing I've ever done. Building companies, building sustainable
Yes.
companies, sustaining success, going through the ups and downs of it all. Because the ups and downs that you have in your day-to-day your day-to-day full-time job or your W-2 job or, like they're still like absolutely, those are
They're there.
real and that's a struggle, right? But
Right.
in entrepreneurship, it's everything is amplified. The highs are higher, the lows are lower. The
Yes.
lows seem like they feel like they last longer and the
Mm.
highs don't feel like they last quite as long, right? But understanding all of that,
Yes.
I wouldn't do anything else.
True.
I wouldn't do anything else,
True.
period, bottom
True.
line. And it
True.
takes that level of dedication to
Yes.
see yourself through the bad times,
Mm.
and in addition to that, build on the good times,
Build on
right?
the good times. Yes.
Oh,
Absolutely. Yes. Mhm.
yeah, man. But Andy, I really appreciate you coming on, man. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Same here. I loved talking with you.
Right back at you, man. Hey, thanks everybody for listening to Robots and Red Tape. I'm Nick Shutt, and I hope you have a wonderful day.